dobry, Katowice. I did my best. That's my Polish for you there. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out to hear me talk about what I think is the best animal ever. So I'm going to go through some of these, and I'm sure that some people already kind of came to this and was like, well, I know what my favorite animal is, and my favorite animal is the best animal ever. So I was wondering if anyone wants to shout out any of their favorite animals. Dolphins, they're all right. Like, dolphins are kind of cool, but I always feel like when you meet people who really like dolphins, they're always like, oh, dolphin is my spirit animal. I have one tattooed there. And you're like, okay. Do you have one tattooed there? Not yet. End of the day. Yeah. Anyone else? Octopus. Yeah. Good, you're on it. Well, normally when I ask people and they're like, oh, my favorite animal is so lovely. Oh, it's so cute. Oh, look at it. Oh, it's not this. Don't care about the African pygmy hedgehog. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's so little and cute. It fits in the hand. It's not that. Screw you, dwarf hamster. Oh, baby seal. Oh. No, that is actually really cute. Look at that. That's pygmy marmoset. Oh, look at that. But that is so cute that they're now endangered because people keep stealing them for pets. There you go. So being cute is this bad thing. So obviously people are like, look, we know you're an ocean guy. Yeah. Blatantly, your cool animal is going to be something from the ocean. And so my kind of cutest animal that I can think of from the ocean is this thing called the vaquita. And they only live in the Sea of Cortez in between California and Mexico. We only discovered them in 1980, and they're almost extinct. So there's about 50 of them left in the whole world because they keep getting tangled up in fishermen's nets. And so Leonardo DiCaprio and various other celebrities are really trying to kind of save this species. So I'm pleased to announce that the best animal ever, my favorite animal, isn't cute. It's actually a member of the Ugly Animal Preservation Society, whose motto is, we can't all be pandas, because this is a big problem in conservation, is that we only like pretty and cute animals. If a charity comes up to you and is like, please give some money for the pandas, or for the rhinos, or the elephants, we're like, yeah, take my money. But if we were like, this sea slug is endangered, or this parasite on these birds, then people are like, nah, I'm not giving you any money. And so what we've started doing as humans is putting like a bias on which animals we decide to protect and which ones we don't. So I'm pleased to announce, like I said, that my favorite animal is ugly, and this is it. It is the octopus. It is an absolutely amazing animal, and I'm going to talk you through why I think it's the best animal. Basically what happened, I thought about getting a tattoo for 8 years, and I had an octopus done. And everyone kept going, oh, why did you get an octopus tattoo? So I got bored of telling them, so I did a presentation. And so now you guys can be like, okay, I'm going to go. You're going to be like, I'm not going to get a dolphin tattoo. I'm going to get an octopus tattoo. So that's the plan. So why are they awesome? Well, first of all, they're psychic, and they can predict football matches. This is possibly one of the most famous octopuses in the world. This is Paul, and he died a couple of years ago, unfortunately, but he lived in an aquarium in Germany. And what they would do is they'd get 2 cubes with the flags of the countries on it, and they put food in the flags, and then they would see which cube Paul went towards, and whichever cube he went towards, that team ended up winning the 2010 Football World Cup. And it just so happens it was luck, and Paul really, really, really liked Spanish flags, and so he would always go towards the Spanish flag, and that was the team that ended up winning. So not properly psychic, but he's pretty cool. So why else are they awesome? Well, they hold a number of world records. Now this holds the world record for the most venomous animal on Earth. So this is the Australian blue-ringed octopus. It's very small, it's about that kind of size, and it hangs around in rock pools. And it kind of has the worst breath ever. So it has a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that live in its mouth. And these bacteria, if it bites you, go into your bloodstream. And they give off a very, very powerful neurotoxin that stops your brain from communicating with your heart and your lungs. So effectively, you drown in your own body. The only way to survive a bite from this, because there's no antivenom, is if you get bitten next to someone that really, really likes you, and they're going to do like CPR and chest compressions on you for 4 hours until the neurotoxin wears off. Luckily, they're a bit like, okay, trust me, you don't want to get bitten by me. So if you do start annoying it, it just does this, and it's just flashing blue light. Please don't touch me, like some kind of disco octopus. But there we go. So that's pretty cool. They hold a number of world records. So recently, we found a load of octopuses, you can say either, in Antarctica. And these are also venomous. And strangely enough, their venom works at really, really low temperatures, which biomedically is quite a difficult thing. So we're analysing these compounds to see if we can use them for anticoagulants and various other things within medicine, which is quite cool. So why else are they cool? Well, they're kind of cute. This one is called the Dumbo octopus, and it's named after Dumbo in the Disney films because it's got these big ears, a bit like me, and it kind of flaps them. And it hangs around in the deep ocean at about 1,000, 2,000 meters, and it just basically eats the crap that falls down from the ocean above, and it comes and eats it. But these are quite cute, and in fact, they discovered one a few years ago. This is it, and it was so cute, they gave it the Latin name, Opistoteuthis adorabilis, because it's so adorable. There we go. So they can be cute as well. I quite like them. What else do they hold world records? Well, this is pretty cool. This is called the blanket octopus. And a number of its tentacles have this big sheet of skin between them. And if something tries to eat this octopus, it gets rid of the skin flap, and that is like eaten by the predator, and then it can escape. But this holds the world record for the largest amount of sexual dimorphism. So that's the difference in size between the male and the female. So this is the female, and the male is 40,000 times smaller than her. So I like big women, but I think like that's going a little bit too far. Like, please, I love you. You know, anyway. So they're pretty cool. Why else? Well, the biggest octopus that we've got is the giant Pacific octopus. And as the name would suggest, they're giant and they live in the Pacific. And these are about 3 meters across. And they hold the world record for being the best mother ever. So this was part of a deep sea survey. And they went down and they found a deep ocean Pacific octopus. And she'd laid her eggs and she was guarding her eggs. And when an octopus mother lays eggs, she doesn't leave them. She doesn't eat. She just blows oxygenated water across them to make sure that they survive. And then as soon as they hatch, she dies. So they went down and they kept surveying the same area, and she was there. And this particular octopus guarded her eggs for 53 months, which makes her the best invertebrate mother ever. Good work, octopi. Right, so what else are they call? Well, I'm sure you've been in the bar and you've had that drunken argument. What would win in a fight, a shark or an octopus? Well, now you've got the answer, because it's an octopus. So this is from an aquarium in Seattle, I believe. And what happened is they had this big tank, and it had octopuses and it had sharks in. And they kept losing sharks, which are kind of a difficult thing to lose. Like, how do you lose a shark? They were like, what's going on here? And basically, the octopuses were lying on the seafloor, camouflage, and then when a shark came along, they would turn it upside down. And sharks, when they're upside down, it initiates a state in them called tonic immobility, where basically they're like, why am I upside down? I've never been upside down before, and they just stop. And so the octopus had figured out they could do that to capture the shark. They would turn it upside down and then just eat it. And they were like, great, maybe we shouldn't put octopuses and sharks together. So there we go. You've got a good fact next time you're in the pub. So how they do that, how they change their color and their texture, is all over their skin are these cells called chromatophores, which are pretty amazing. And they've got basically different sheets of pigment and reflective layers, and they can change this muscle ring to alter that. And the most amazing thing about octopus's skin is it can detect light and think for itself. So that bit on the bottom is a section of octopus skin that has been removed from the octopus, and just by shining different colored lights on it, it automatically changes color. So the octopus can change its color without actually having to think about it, which is, again, absolutely amazing. And this is the kind of thing they can do. They can change their color and they can change their texture to really blend in and camouflage so they don't get eaten. Awesome. Right. Some of them, unfortunately, are born without chromatophores. And this is the Australian burrowing octopus, which instead of being able to hide using its skin, it's like, oh no, quick! So it's got a really good siphon, and it basically blows water into the sand, turning it into quicksand, and as it goes down, it gives off loads of mucus and snot and makes its own kind of burrow with a chimney. So I always think like, hey, come back to my house. I made my own house out of my own snot and sand. Be great to bring ladies back, maybe. Anyway, they're masters of escape. And this makes them really, really difficult to keep in aquariums. So basically, the whole octopus is just a big bag of muscles. And the only hard part in it is its beak. So if it can get its beak through something, then the rest of the octopus can kind of get through no problem. And this makes them really difficult to look after in aquariums because they're always trying to escape. So you can like put one in a jar, like this one. I thought this was amazing. It's just like, hey, I don't want to be in the jar. And then it like undoes the jar. It's like, come on, yeah. Come on, you can escape. Then it gets out. Then it goes, nah, I'll just go back in. There we go. So this makes them so difficult to keep. So I lived for a long time in a city called Brighton, which is on the south coast of England. And there's an aquarium there that's 200 years old. And they have like these documents about how difficult it is to keep octopuses. And so more recently, in the last kind of 10 years, they kept having fish disappear from different tanks. And they were like, why are the fish disappearing? And then they figured what the octopus was doing was dismantling its filtration system, then going through all the pipes in the aquarium, using the temperature to find the nice warm tropical tanks, eating the fish, and then navigating back to its own tank and sitting there like, la 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 la, it wasn't me, kind of. And then they figured out what was going. So while they kind of made the filtration system octopus-proof, they put it in a tank in the middle of the room, not attached to the rest of the aquarium. And then they got it on CCTV, on the camera. What it does is it crawled up over the side of the tank, across the floor, into another tank, ate the fish, and then went back because they can hold their breath. Just like we can hold our breath when we go underwater, these things can hold their breath, and they can go in between rock pools, and they can come out on land. And actually, the science fiction writer H.G. Wells wrote kind of a science fiction horror thing about deep sea octopuses coming out and taking people off of the beach and things like that. So yeah, pretty awesome. So another reason why they're really cool is they use tools. Now, this is kind of seen as an indicator of intelligence. So we like monkeys, oh yeah, they use tools. And we've seen some crows use tools as well. Like they'll drop nuts in the road for cars to run over them, then they'll come and pick them up. But octopuses, they are one of the only invertebrates that use tools, and this is called the coconut octopus. And what this one does is it's hanging around and it doesn't want to get eaten, so it carries 2 halves of a coconut with it everywhere that it goes. And then if someone tries to eat it, it just kind of goes block, and it goes into the coconut. It's like, I'm just a coconut, honestly, and it gets away with it. And some other octopuses, I thought this was amazing. There's a deep sea octopus that comes along and it finds jellyfish with stingers. It eats the top part of the jellyfish and then just carries the tentacles around with it as a protection, stinging other things if it tries to eat them. I'm like, what? That's incredible. So yeah, in terms of tool use, they are absolutely amazing. Now, this brings me on to my favorite octopus, which is this guy called the mimic octopus. And it really lives up to its name. So this octopus is kind of small, about that kind of size, and it lives in the sandy parts of Indonesia. And there's not really much to hide there. There's no rocks and seaweed, it's just sand. So when it's born, it's kind of like, okay, I'm here, there's nowhere to hide. So it's a little bit like that quiet people-watching person at a party, and it just kind of sees how different animals interact with each other. And so it's like, okay, so that animal is scared of that animal, or this predator doesn't like that one or is not interested in it. And so it learns by watching interactions with different species, which animals don't care about that one or which ones are scared of it. And then depending on what predator it's faced with, it has up to 16 different animals that it pretends to be depending on that predator. So the basic one that it does is it just pretends to be some seaweed. Just la la la, going along the seafloor, like, don't bother me, I'm just seaweed, you don't want to eat me. Okay, which is pretty awesome. And then it gets kind of better, it pretends to be a hermit crab, and I thought this was incredible, especially that, like, it's even got the little curly bit, just like on the shell. I was like, this is amazing. It's like, okay, I'm a hermit crab, what else could I be? Well, it buries its back legs under the water, and it kind of does that with its arms, and it pretends to be a sea snake. What else does it do? It kind of gathers all of its tentacles up and has one trailing out the back, and it becomes a stingray. This one here becomes like a flatfish, kind of going along, and if all of those fail, it just goes, leave me alone, kind of thing, as like the final ditch attempt. But I was like, this is an amazing animal to be able to take these observations of its world and then apply them and pretend to be something. I'm like, my God, these octopuses are onto something special. And in fact, they're so clever that when you keep them in tanks, they get really, really bored really easily. They act a little bit like a prisoner in solitary confinement. They get really bored and they start breaking things. Some of them start self-harming and they bite their own tentacles off. So in an aquarium, it's a job of someone to be the octopus babysitter or the octopus kind of play person. And they come along and they give the octopus toys and they look after it and they build up a connection with the octopus. And it really helps if they want to take the octopus into another tank. Because just like when you were a child, you had a favorite toy, a favorite teddy or a dolly, then you could be like, come on, octopus, here's your favorite toy. And the octopus would be like, yeah, great, I got my favorite toy. And it'll go and start playing with this. I think this one is slightly misleading because I don't think the octopus actually sits there and goes, oh, yes, I think I've got a red side there, kind of thing. But it's quite cool that they play around with them. They've got all kinds of crazy toys and like toddlers and Mr. Potato Head things. It's great. So I was like, okay, octopuses are like super intelligent. So why don't they rule the world? And then I started looking at octopus's anatomy and trying to figure out like what was going on. And the octopus has got some absolutely incredible things going on inside it. And effectively, it's the closest thing to an alien that we have on Earth. So when we look at its anatomy, it's got a brain in the middle, just like we have. It's got a brain up there. But the weird thing about its brain is that that isn't where most of its brain is. So in us, if we look at the amount of neurons, our nerve cells, 90% are in our brain, and the remaining 10% are distributed throughout our body. And those help us move around, and we send signals, and they come back, and we can detect hot and cold and all those things using those nerves. But in an octopus, only 30% of its brain is in its brain, and the remaining 70% is distributed equally throughout its body. So it can, like, its arms can think for itself, and it can just go along and grab things and feed it. And if you cut a tentacle off, it can still think for itself and move, and it tries to feed a mouth or still move around as if it were attached to a real-life octopus. So this is incredible to find an animal with amazing intelligence that still acts in the same way as us. And I was like, okay, so they're quite intelligent. And a 2-year-old octopus is cleverer than a 2-year-old child, so why don't they rule the earth? And most octopuses are really, really antisocial. They're very territorial, and they hate other octopuses. And strangely enough, they did an experiment where they gave octopuses ecstasy. So ecstasy in humans, when you take some, or MDMA, you become very, oh, I love you, and you want to cuddle people and all this. And they were like, I wonder if this will work on an octopus. So, I mean, how do scientists get funding for this? So they got some ecstasy and gave it to octopuses, and the octopuses also were like, hey man, I love you, and they started hanging out together and being really nice. So clearly, despite having completely different brains, it still works like that. So I'm like, okay, so maybe the key is that octopuses' hearts. And I say hearts because octopuses actually have 3 hearts. So they've got a main heart in the middle there, which is their systemic heart. And above each set of lungs, they have above each set of gills, they have a branchial heart. And those 3 hearts are what's needed to pump their blood around their body all the time. So I'm like, so why do they have 3 hearts? We only have 1 heart. And the reason is because our blood is iron-based. So we've got this hemoglobin in our blood that goes around, and it's red because it's iron-based, and we get oxygen from the air, and it bonds to the hemoglobin in the blood cell, and that goes and takes it to the cells where they need it. But in octopuses, they have got something completely different, which is hemocyanin. And this is copper-based. So this means that octopuses have kind of a greeny-blue blood, which is pretty cool in itself. And this works at a much wider range of temperatures. So octopuses often live in really cold waters, and we die if we go below 20 degrees. I mean, if we go hypothermic and our body starts shutting down if we get colder than like 35 or something like that. But octopuses can work at a really vast range of temperatures, and it's because they've got hemocyanin. But hemocyanin is half as good at providing oxygen than hemoglobin. So as a result, the octopus has 3 hearts going like full pelt. It's like it's running its entire life. So most octopuses don't live longer than 2 years. Normally, they mate and then they die. Like as soon as the man is like, here you go, here's my sperm, I'm dead. And that's pretty much it. And the woman's like, I've laid some eggs, great, and I'm gonna wait till they've hatched. And now I'm dead. And that's pretty much their life. And so I'm like, oh my God, what would happen if they lived as long as us? Because we do live on a blue planet. I know here we're miles from the coast, and we're used to thinking, we look at a map and we're like, oh yeah, look at all the land. There's loads and loads of land there. But actually, most of our planet is water. We shouldn't really call it planet Earth. We should really call it planet water. And if we start looking at like how much of it we've explored very, very little. When I first became an oceanographer, they said, oh, we've only explored 2% of our ocean. And because it covers 70% of the planet, that's a lot of planet we still have to explore. I'm pleased to say that 20 years on, we are now at 5%. So if we keep on going at this rate, we should have explored our planet in its total in about 550 years. But if we look at the habitable space on Earth, because we live on the land, which is basically 2-dimensional, and the ocean is 3-dimensional, in terms of habitable space, the ocean makes up 99% of habitable space on Earth. And that's why we basically discover a new deep-sea animal once every 2 weeks, is the thing. So there's a lot of stuff out there that we just don't know about. So in my head, I'm like, there's totally an octopus civilization down there plotting and waiting to take over. So we better watch out, okay? I'm going to finish because I'm running out of time. But there is a cute little baby octopus. I was like, oh, and what does he say? He says, thank you, dziękuję. There we go. Thank you very much.